Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Hello and welcome to Road to Recovery, Advocacy and Insights for Trucking Accidents with Sagi Shaked. Today on Road to Recovery, we're diving into the expert witness strategy from scene reconstruction to long-term care planning and how these professionals can make or break a catastrophic injury or trucking accident case. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and of course, as always, I am here with Sagi Shaked. Sagi, so good to see you. Welcome back.
Thanks for coming back, Kevin. Haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I've aged terribly in the process, but I'm glad to be here with you. So let's dive in. What is an expert witness, and why are they essential in trucking and catastrophic injury cases?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in trucking cases, we seem to get a lot of expert witnesses involved. And an expert witness is someone who has a field or an expertise in a certain field. For example, sometimes you see it with accident reconstruction experts, or they will reconstruct the accident. Sometimes we have trucking experts, people who have been truck drivers for years, who can talk about what a truck driver does, what the industry standard is for truck drivers. Sometimes you have a human factors expert. It really depends on the type of trucking case it is and what's involved to determine what type of expert you need. But I can tell you in most trucking cases, you're going to need an accident reconstruction expert unless it's a straight run-of-the-mill type of rear-end collision.
We've talked about this before. I think the accident reconstructionist idea is really fascinating with trying to take this like evidence and piece everything together. How does that process unfold? What kind of information do they need, and what do they come out with at the end?
Yeah, so with an accident reconstruction expert, we need to get the pieces of the puzzle, right away, because a lot of materials disappear when you have a trucking accident. So if you can get the lawyer involved right away from the beginning, or if you're a lawyer handling the case, get involved right in the beginning and get to the scene with your accident reconstruction expert. So don't wait until you have a case to look for an accident reconstruction expert. They should be ready to roll on speed dial. It doesn't matter that you've used them in the past. If they're good, you're going to continue to use them in the future, and you've used them in the past. So when your accident reconstruction expert gets to the scene, they really want to look for skid marks on the road, gouge marks, any type of evidence that they can use to reconstruct the accident. So we're dealing right now with a truck and motorcycle collision. And one of the things that's helping us put together the pieces of the puzzle for the accident reconstruction expert is, on one hand, we have the black box data, which we've talked about in the past, but the motorcycle doesn't have any black box data. So what we're able to do is reconstruct that scene through the videos we were able to get through one of the neighboring properties. Actually, I have two motorcycle cases, almost identical, going on at the same time. One's involving a big 18-wheeler, which horrific injuries, and another one's involving a car with really bad injuries. But in both cases, the accident reconstruction expert was able to tell us how fast or the speed of both of the cars at the time of the collision, because they were able to use the video and use landmarks and then be able to tell us what would be the perception reaction time for each of them given the amount of time and distance left before the crash. So it really helps, me as a plaintiff's lawyer or anybody representing the injured person, to put together those pieces of the puzzle that we're constantly trying to put together. So if you have one of these cases, what you want to do is get all that information at the beginning, from cell phone records to videos to pictures to witness statements to anything that can help put together the speed and to help the accident reconstruct that accident, so it makes it easier for the jury to understand, and more importantly also for the insurance company to understand, so they can properly evaluate the case.
Wow, that's incredible that they could do that from just that one neighbor video. They could take a tell based on the landmarks and stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know myself how to do that because I'm not a reconstruction expert, and I don't have their calculator and the way they do things. But I hire the best, so if you hire the best, they'll be able to tell you the most accurate speed that the client or the defendant was driving.
I don't think I'm good enough at math to do that job.
That makes two of us.
So another thing we've talked about before is TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. There's also spinal injuries as well. Obviously, those are two of the biggest things that can, happen to you after an accident. How do medical experts help establish both the severity of these and also the long-term impact it could have on a client's life.
Yeah. So with medical experts, what we want to do, especially when you're talking about a TBI, and I'll talk about a spinal cord in a minute, but with a TBI, what you want to do is you want to get your team in place. I mean, I was dealing today with a deposition, and the defense attorney, super nice guy, tells me, I don't believe it's a TBI. We're not going to pay you for a TBI. Well, I didn't know the defense attorney went to medical school, and I didn't know that he's qualified to even talk about it. But what we do is like to get a neurologist who's treating the individual, the person who's the victim, and have them explain, one, the brain and how the brain can be impacted when it's in a collision. If you're dealing with an 18-wheeler or another event, how that brain is impacted and what that impact looks like. So we like to use a nice demonstrative aid, which is a demonstrative that shows how the brain moves about in the skull. So if the skull is here and you have the brain pushing forward on a rear end collision and then slamming back, they call that a coup contra coup type of injury, where both sides of the brain are getting impacted, even though the person doesn't have to have someone hit them in the head. It could just be like whiplash where you're going back and forth.
Mhm.
So the neurologist will put that story together for us and explain the medicine on how the axons and neurons in the brains are damaged and how that can lead to an injury and whatever ramifications happen from that. For a spinal cord injury, you want to get, and also for a traumatic brain injury, we want to talk about life care planners, people who can talk about what the future care and medical treatment will look like. Because it's all good for us to say this person's going to need future care, but where does that come from? Someone's got to testify to the type of future care a person's going to go through. And a lot of times we use the life care planners, if the case justifies it, to talk about that. So the life care planner is usually a medical doctor, and that medical doctor will consult, let's say it's a spinal cord injury, with the person's orthopedic physician or neurosurgeon, talk about what type of procedures they will need in the future, what type of care. The life care planner will also talk about what type of needs they will need. So think about it. If you have a spinal cord injury, someone could have life-altering injury where they would need a special type of van. They would need special type of accommodations in their house and maybe in their work. So it really depends. They may also need nursing assistance. It really depends on the type of injury. But we use the neurologist, the life care planner, the orthopedic, the neurosurgeon, physiatrists. It really depends on the type of injury. But the experts are key to making the case and also to showing the injuries and what that means for the future.
Some things I feel like I'm sure you can calculate, whether it's lost earnings, things like that, even some long-term care you can. Other things like pain and suffering, loss of quality of life, that kind of stuff, obviously harder to put a number on. How do you advocate for your clients to get those types of damages?
You're absolutely right. Medical bills, that's easy. You add up the numbers and those are the medical bills, or lost wages. They were making, let's say, $100,000 a year or $50,000 a year, and they couldn't work or can't work anymore. And then you multiply that times the amount of years. That's the easy part. The pain and suffering part really depends. And pain and suffering are two different things. Someone could be suffering, but they're not in pain at the time. So you really have to distinguish what is pain, what is suffering. And then there's other things in the jury instructions, because we all hear in the news pain and suffering verdicts, but it's not just pain and suffering. So you have pain, you have suffering, two different things. You have mental anguish. You have loss of the ability to enjoy life. You have inconvenience. And if it's an aggravation of a pre-existing condition, then it's the aggravation of that pre-existing condition. So every state has their different words that they use, or, a play on the words, but they're all kind of what I just went through. So inconvenience is another one. I mean, we had a client testify today, the inconvenience that she has every time she gets in the car and she's scared to drive, the inconvenience of having other people drive her around because of the horrific injury of the crash, and some other types of items. So how do we do that? We like to tell, what the client has gone through and talk about the future, and then give examples. I don't want to do them necessarily all on the podcast, just because the defense is listening to the podcast, and I'm not here to give them, they can look up my prior transcripts, but I'm not going to help them do the homework. But yeah, some of the trials are televised, so they'll be able to see it anyways.
Court TV.
Yes.
With the expert witnesses, obviously the other side, the defense is going to want to, if they have a compelling case, like you said, the accident reconstructionist can tell all this stuff, neurologists come in, all that. They're going to want to cross-examine. They're going to want to try to knock them down a peg. The credibility is probably one of the biggest things on these witnesses. So these expert witnesses, how much does that credibility matter in a case as far as how the defense will come back at your witness?
Yeah, so the defense is definitely going to hire their own accident reconstruction experts, and they will 100% say something different than your accident reconstruction experts, because that's what they get paid to do.
Right.
They're not going to say the truth. They're going to play with the numbers and come up with something that's convenient for the defense. In one trial we had, jury clearly did not believe the defense accident reconstruction expert. In fact, in Florida, at least, juries at the end of the examination of each of the experts or each of the people that are testifying, they get to write on their notepad a question and submit it to the judge through the bailiff. The bailiff takes their questions and takes it to the judge, and then the judge brings over both counsel for the plaintiff and defense and reads the questions and then determines if it's a valid question to ask or not. And the question in one of my cases was, to the defense expert, how are you so sure that it happened this way? I remember the judge reading it and I started laughing. And I knew who wrote it. How are you so sure that it happened this way? What, do you have a time machine? And I can tell you the judge did not let that question happen. But
Sure.
What we did do in that case was, in closing argument, we looked at that juror who actually said that comment, and we asked him the question, a rhetorical kind of question. How is that expert so sure? What, did he have a time machine? He knew what was going on? And so that kind of worked to our favor. So sometimes you can tell they take these ridiculous positions that just don't make sense. It's not, it doesn't make any common sense. And that's kind of the job of the lawyer, the trial lawyer. You're going to come in there and you're going to expose why the defense position doesn't make sense. That's why it's so important I'm going to loop this back into the beginning, send out those preservation letters, get to that scene right away, get the evidence right away, because if you're missing evidence, you're losing that ability to really call them to task when you are cross-examining these defense experts, because if you don't have the evidence, how are you going to do it?
With medical experts, do they bring in their own medical experts who say opposite stuff too? Because it feels like if the diagnosis is fairly clear, I know they're trying to save money, but there's some ethics problems going on there, right?
Yeah. I can tell you in almost every case, probably 99% of cases, they're going to bring in a doctor who's going to say that the plaintiff is not injured. Or it depends on the case, right? If it's a catastrophic case and the person has horrific injuries and they're all at the hospital, what's a defense expert really going to say other than they're perfectly fine now and they're going to be fine and everything's great? We had a life care planner come in one of our cases, and what they basically said was the defense hired this doctor we call him Dr. Death, because he said that no one's going to, any one of our quadriplegic clients, they're going to die right away. There's no chance of them having a long survival. They will die with 3 to 5 years. And the reason this doctor says that, he has a little outfit out in I don't want to say the exact state, but it's all the way one of the most Western states we have, a little bit on the north side. He has an outfit out there that he says that people just don't live, quadriplegics don't live more than 3 to 5 years. And the reason they say that is because they want to reduce the future medical care that they have to pay in the future. So they bring this doctor in and parade him in, and it's all nonsense. I've had clients now that have been alive for more than 10 years. And so that's clearly defeats what they're saying. And then remember Christopher Reeves? How long did he stay alive for? And he was paralyzed. There's Nick Bonacani's son, who's still alive. He played football, got injured playing football, became a quadriplegic, and he's still alive. So the arguments that they come with are, they'll hire experts to say whatever it is so they don't have to pay, or they can reduce the amount that they have to pay. And it's the job of the lawyer to expose their bias, to expose that they're using, whether it's an engineer, fuzzy math, or if it's in medicine, you really have to know the case inside and out and grill those people and show the jury why they're not being honest with you, that their argument is disingenuous. And also, so now that's in the catastrophic case. But what if you have a case that's not catastrophic? You have someone who got injured, went to the hospital and still having that nagging pain. So what the defense always does, this is in every case. And when I was a young lawyer, now I'm an old lawyer, when I was a young lawyer, the defense would always bring their doctor, and here's what they say. Let's say it's a herniated disc case, and maybe a procedure or no procedure. The defense, and I can guarantee you, I could write their reports. That person should have healed after 6 to 8 weeks. Doesn't matter what happened after that. 6 to 8 weeks, that herniated disc should heal, as if every person is the same. And Kevin, you're going through it now, right? You're having some pain. Are you back to 100%? I don't think so. But that's what they say. They would hire a doctor to say 6 to 8 weeks, and you shouldn't pay them anymore. That's all it is. So yeah, of course, the defense is going to bring their doctors. We have our doctors, and then it's a matter of who the jury believes, and hopefully the jury will see through the nonsense of what the defense is pushing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm over 2 months and still have pain. So yeah, that's a bunch of BS for sure. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you said you have like a great accident reconstructionists that you use. I'm sure you have different expert witnesses that just are really good at what they do and you work with. How do you choose someone? How do you feel like what builds that trust between you and them, and how do you then pass that trust along to your clients so they know they're getting the best representation?
So I look for a couple of factors. One is I'm looking for someone who has credentials, someone who knows how to talk, because you can have the best credentials in the world, but if you can't talk in a deposition or in front of a jury, I think it's going to hamper the person's case. Yeah. Are you a likable person? I don't want someone who's pompous or just full of themselves. I want someone who's likable, who can communicate the point, and has got the credentials to do it. That's how I'm looking at it. And then with credentials, I want to see that they've done it in the past. So newbies someone's always got to start as a newbie. It's a little harder, but with more experienced experts who've been tested before, you have some sort of background to go with, or some sort of credibility factor that goes with them. Same thing with a trial lawyer. You want someone who's actually been in the trenches, knows what they're doing, has had some verdicts, some big verdicts and settlements, so they can represent you, as opposed to someone who's just coming right out of school. And I'm not knocking anyone coming out of school. I'm just saying there's an experience factor that you just know, and you've seen certain things, and then you can anticipate certain things. So same thing with the experts. I want to do my due diligence, look at them, make sure they've never been disqualified before, because you don't want to have an expert that's disqualified. That'll obviously hurt your case. Yeah. And then you want to give them all the information, because if she doesn't have all the information as your expert, he or she is going to get grilled. So you want to give them all the information and make sure that there's nothing that can be touched with that expert's opinion. And again, I don't want experts who are just going to say what I want them to say. I want the truth. The defense does that. They hire experts to say whatever they want them to say. And I'll give you an example. I have a case going on right now. We're set for trial and sometime in August. I think it's August 11th. And the defense goes out and hires experts and wrote down what they want them to say. So when we took the expert's deposition, the expert's like, I don't have that opinion. I've never had that opinion. But when the defense filed their expert disclosures, this is the disclosure you have to file with the court and tell the court everything that's going on and what this person's going to say. They put that this person was going to say A, because this is a trial that might happen soon. I don't want to necessarily say it right now, but they put this person's going to say, we'll call it A. And the expert said, I never told them that. I don't even know where they get that information from. So the defense was trying to buy an expert. He didn't go that way and really cause them problems. Yeah. And we'll see how that case goes. It'll be pretty interesting. And I'll do a podcast after that case, and we'll talk about what they said.
Yeah, that's good for him for having integrity there.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's refreshing, huh?
You don't see it often.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. For more information or to connect with Sagi and his team, visit shakedlaw.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We got lots more stuff coming your way. Sagi, always great to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Likewise. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.